Hello, today is the 27th of December, and we are in the 8th episode or chapter of our series about Syria. And today we shall still talk about the situation between Israel and Syria. And as I already indicated before, Israel had a problem of even entering into talks with Syria because of this history of enmity, extreme enmity that was always shown by Syria towards Israel. But then I explained, in previous episodes why decision was taken in Syria and in Israel to enter the peace process in the Madrid Peace Conference that ended up the Gulf War in 1991. And then for years later on, there were talks all the time, intermittently, not all the time, but they were going on from 1991 with interruptions until basically the beginning of the Syrian civil war in 2011. And they did not produce anything in terms of a peace treaty that was supposed to be the result of these negotiations. And the reasons for that were analyzed by me in previous chapters. I just want to reiterate again something that not always was so clear during the talks themselves. And the idea behind the talks in terms of the Israeli side was that what could tempt the Syrians under Hafez Assad first and then under Bashar Assad to make peace with Israel will be basically an acceptance of the fact that Syria demanded a complete Israeli withdrawal from the Golan Heights that were taken over by Israel in the war of 1967, in response to what was at that time Syrian aggression. So the idea was full peace for full withdrawal, or 99 point whatever, but almost 100% of withdrawal. That was even made abundantly clear in the last negotiation that the late Hafez Assad conducted before he died. It was in March of 2000 when he went to Geneva to meet with then American President Bill Clinton. He was already half dead at that time, Hafez Assad. His health condition was terrible. It could be seen also in the picture that came from the meeting, in which basically he rejected an Israeli proposal that was conveyed via Clinton to basically receive all the Golan Heights, but for a little strip of land, a little, very little one. And it wasn't really understood by everybody. I mean, how could he reject something like this, as opposed, say, to Sadat? We insisted during the peace process between Egypt and Israel to receive everything, including the disputed territory, the little enclave of land in Taba that was then given over to Egypt through international arbitration. And the reason for that was at that time something that now seems so understandable. Hafez Assad knew that making formal peace with Israel could be a problem to his regime or the regime of his son later on, because of the opposition that might be aroused in Syria, because of the fact that you talk here about the Alawi community through its leadership making peace with Israel. And as of 1994, when his senior son, the oldest son, Basil, was killed in this mysterious so-called road accident in Damascus, he was really working as much as he could to engineer the rise to power of the other son, Bashar, when he will finally die, Hafez Assad, which happened finally in June of 2000. That is to say, the real concern of Hafez Assad was the existence of his regime during his life, and even much more importantly, during the life of his successor, his own son. And why do I make the point all the time? Because there wasn't enough attention given in Israel and in other countries to the importance of sectarianism in Syria and the sectarian issue. It all seemed to be under control because of all those so many years in which Hafez first and then Bashar were in control. But it was a big mistake. It was a big mistake. And what we see are interesting things happening now. And I talk here again on the 27th of December There is no peaceful transition in Syria. There are killings of Alawis in the streets. There is an hunt over 4 Alawis in the streets of cities. There is a response by Alawis. There are already collisions. People are being killed. And much more of it will happen, I predict, will happen, if the new regime, and when, rather than if, will try to enter into the very core of the Alawi heartland in the mountains of northwest Syria. That will be a real bad bloodbath. So sectarian issue has always been a big issue. And that leads me to another point that connected with what Israel should or could do these days and in the future about Syria. One thing that Israel should not do and could not do, and I emphasize it, and not always people who support Israel realize it, Israel does not know how to deal with internal conflicts in Arab countries, or rather is unable to deal with it. I'll tell you a little secret here. Israel is not so popular in the Arab world. Yes, I know. Things have changed. There's peace with Egypt, there's peace with Jordan, the Abraham Accords. These peace treaties are mostly with regimes, not with the people. And when we come to Syria, let's face it, there is not even one important, significant political force in Syria that is ready today, or that I can predict will be ready in the foreseeable future, to get into anything like formal peace with Israel. Yes, I know that everybody asks me, and I get all these reactions from people after the episodes before and after. So what about the Druze? Yes, the Druze would not like to fight Israel. The Druze would like to keep the border in the south of Syria between Syria and Israel peaceful. And by the way, that has to do also with Jordan, because it is connected also with Jordan. And very briefly about Jordan, it is also the interest of Jordan, obviously, that this border between Israel and Syria in the south will be peaceful. But beyond that, the Druze will not go to anything like splitting from the Syrian state in any shape or form in order to create this security situation with Israel. It will be a situation on the ground at best, and even that remains to be seen. And Israel should strive and work hard to create the condition that will allow it to happen. And they start doing it now on the ground in South Syria. They do it. But the expectation that somehow there could be a splitting up of the Syrian state in a formal way, so that the Druze enclave in the south will enter into anything like full-fledged peace with Israel, is an illusion. It's not going to happen. It is not going to happen. Israeli politicians in the past toyed with the idea. The late Yigal Allon, in the past, Deputy Prime Minister of Israel after the War of 1967, suggested that Israel would create a Druze state in South Syria. No. It was a futile idea at that time. It is still a futile idea now. By the way, by the end of the series, as of next week or so, by the end of the series, when it deals with specific current issues in Syria, I will have 2 or 3 more videos about specific communities in Syria and their history, and therefore what we can expect from them in the future. And one of them will be the Druze of Syria. But we can, and Israel should, strive to create a security zone along the border with Syria in the south that would be supported by the local population. That could be done, but no more than that. It's a lot, but no more than that. Now people ask about what could Israel do with the Kurds in the northeast of Syria. My simple answer is very little, very little. That should not be a problem from an Israeli perspective, simply because Israel might have a problem there, because it will be between Turkey and the Kurds. And the question about Turkey in Syria, and I'll come to that momentarily, is of course a big issue. It could be a big issue for Israel. But Israel has no border with northeast Syria. The IDF is stretched out if the Turks would like to go and once and for all, as they see it, take care of the Kurdish enclave in northeast Syria, that should be a problem for the US, not for Israel. Israel simply can't do anything about it. There is a limit to how Israel can intervene in domestic politics of Arab countries. There is a limit. And we saw it in the case of Lebanon. And one of the big lessons of the Israeli intervention in Lebanon was it was logical to intervene because there was a civil war in which part of the Lebanese people said publicly, up to a point, we are ready to cooperate with Israel. But they proved to be too weak, and we know what happened in Lebanon. And by the way, interestingly also about Lebanon, in 1979, it's a little bit of history, but sometimes historical notes are important. The then leader of the Phalange, the old Sheikh Pierre Jumail himself, said toward the Muslims of Lebanon and the Palestinians, because of what you do to us Christians, you force us to cooperate with the devil, which means Israel. And some elements of the behavior of the Christians in Lebanon, the Maronites and others, in 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, had to do with this notion. Even though many Israelis thought at that time that they are the best friends of Israel and the best allies of Israel. The minority concept that for many, many years was kind of an ideal for many Israelis. Let's develop relationship with the minorities in the Middle East. It had its limitations, and even more so now. The fact of the matter is, if we have peace, we means Israel in the Middle East, it is with regimes, Sunni Muslim regimes, not with any minoritarian situation. So, therefore, what Israel could expect to see in Syria is some kind of a border that could be monitored and controlled by a local population that has the same interest as us, to monitor that the border will be peaceful. But that brings me to the role of Turkey. We hear more and more about Turkish plans about Syria. We shall build a new Syrian army, we shall reconstruct Syrian economy, we shall reconstruct the transport situation in Syria, we shall reconstruct whatever in Syria. Turkey is unable to do all that. Their economy is in shutters. And Turkey is not going to do all that, but Turkey can still do something which will be a problem for Israel. The Turks can have an agreement, and they might as well have one, with whatever Syrian government of the future that will enable them to take precautions about Israeli activities in Syria that might go beyond the southern border of Syria with Israel. That's a problem. That's a possibility, and that's a specter that Israeli policymakers already behind closed doors are starting to talk about. So Syria and Israel is going to continue to be a problem for Israel. It could be mitigated by the possibility of cooperating with the Druze population in the south of Syria to maintain security on both sides of the border, but not more than that. But even that remains to be seen, because one thing that we learned about the Druze population of Syria is they need to be sure that they don't take too much of a risk if they seem even to look like they're cooperating with Israel. And that is a delicate situation that not always the Israelis knew how to handle, one should say it. Well, today is Friday. Juma Mubarak. Shabbat Shalom. We shall see you all again on Tuesday for another episode. And until then, I wish you all a nice weekend and a peaceful one. Thank you very much.